Can you hear
Thank you
me?
for the wonderful introduction. And thank you everyone for attending our presentation on lessons learned using MAXQDA to analyze patient-centered data. My name is Allie, and I'll be presenting with my colleagues Alex and Kayla. Today, we will be discussing several key aspects of qualitative coding within the life sciences industry. First, we will explore how coding enhances insights in this industry, followed by an overview of the code system in MAXQDA. Next, Alex will discuss the role of code comments and the code matrix browser. Finally, Kayla will cover coder agreement and best practices for merging projects to streamline collaborative analyses. Let's get started. This presentation will provide an overview of key lessons learned from using MAXQDA in life sciences. Qualitative coding is essential for understanding the experiences of clinicians, patients, and caregivers. It allows us to uncover nuanced perspectives on living with or caring for someone with a disease, highlighting the preferences, challenges, and barriers that quantitative data may miss. Moreover, analysis of clinician, patient, and caregiver feedback allows us to refine study designs and then make them more patient-centered. The majority of our qualitative research draws upon two types of interviews: concept elicitation and cognitive debriefing. Concept elicitation interviews help us identify key concepts like symptoms or impacts that are important and relevant to clinicians, patients, and caregivers. Cognitive debriefing interviews facilitate conversations to ensure accuracy, reliability, and validity of measures. We also use content analysis to uncover patterns in the data and thematic analysis to explore deeper connections between categories. These insights help us to support regulatory submissions by complementing the quantitative findings with holistic patient-focused data that provide a more complete picture of patient experiences. Ultimately, qualitative coding allows us to bring the patient's voice to life, providing insights that go beyond numbers to drive impactful decisions. It reveals the human side of diseases and provides a clearer understanding of how lives are affected beyond medical interventions or clinical metrics. Qualitatively coding clinician, patient, and caregiver experiences in MAXQDA enhances and strengthens the life sciences industry's ability to deliver impactful results. Now let's explore the first key aspect of MAXQDA that supports this work, the code system. MAXQDA's code system is a window for organizing and analyzing qualitative data. Think of it as a filing system where you can label and categorize your data, whether it's text, images, audio, video, using codes that represent specific concepts, ideas, or themes. One key lesson we've learned is that life sciences research often involves large amounts of complex data. Efficient coding strategies, like using MAXQDA's hierarchical coding structuring, are essential to mitigate errors and ensure insights aren't missed. Organizing codes hierarchically shows us how to create high-level parent codes and then more specific subcodes. For example, we may organize our codes in the following way: a parent code like symptoms up at the top with a subcodes like cough. This structure helps us keep the coding system organized and allows us to break down concepts into more detailed categories for analysis. Another lesson we've learned is the need for flexibility. New themes often emerge as coding progresses, requiring adjustments in the code system. To address this, we also include a subcode titled Other Symptoms, which we use to capture any symptoms that may not be deductively added, but inductively added later. Additionally, the code system window includes right-clicking to copy and paste subcodes. This allows for us to maintain the code system structure without recreating the wheel. A few of our other favorite key features within the code system window include displaying different frequency counts and activating codes by variable. We display different frequency counts by clicking on the gear at the top right to display the different frequency counts. Thank you, Alex. This allows for us to examine which codes were used within one or more transcripts at a time. Lastly, activating multiple codes via right-clicking on code and more, and then going to activate codes by variable, allows for us to easily maneuver throughout the codebook and select groups of codes quickly for use in other tools like the code matrix browser, which you will see demonstrated in a few minutes. Now let's move on to the next key features of MAXQDA. The next one is code comments.
Thank you, Allie. So code comments are short comments attached to a single coded segment. They can be created several different ways, like double-clicking on the empty circle in the coding stripe, right-clicking on the coding stripe and then selecting Edit Comment. Also can double-click on the comment pane in the Retrieve Segments window, or add a comment via the Coded Segments window. A helpful inclusion in MAXQDA 2024 is a live character counter showing you how close you are to the 511 character limit. Within the industry, it's useful for emerging trends and themes, especially within broad codes that have been deductively added from the interview guide. Also helpful for summarizing coded segments. It can be as simple as a word or two sometimes. Also helpful to flag codes that could be significant, and also identify exemplar quotes for dissemination, reports, and all of that. Additionally, you can also keep track of coding notes or rules within coding comments, either for yourself or another team member that may also work in the project. After you've added a comment, you can view and edit this comment in a few different ways. In the document system, rolling your mouse over the coding stripe will display the code tooltip that will include a few things, like the data about the user who coded it, when they coded it, and then will also display the entirety of the code comment. An easy way to see in the document system if a code has a comment is if the circle in the coding stripe is filled. Codes without comments will have an unfilled circle. In the document browser, you can display the sidebar that will appear to the right of the document to view code comments and memos. From this view, you're also able to edit code comments or delete it entirely. Double-clicking or right-clicking on the code system, on a code in a code system, and selecting Coded Segments option will pull up the Coded Segments window. From this view, you can see all of the segments assigned to a single code and easily add comments for any codes and any and all codes within that window. Within the segment matrix, found in the Mix Methods tab here, you are able to turn on code comments when viewing quotes. These are going to be displayed at the end of a coded segment in blue text and will have a blue speech bubble to the left of it. When exported, like in Excel, they'll be displayed at the end of the coded segment within brackets. The Retrieve Segments window as well will display comments to the right of the coded segment, and you have the ability to edit, add, or delete by double-clicking on the comment viewing pane next to the coded segment. So let me walk through some of what I've just kind of explained in Max. So here I've got a kind of example transcript of what we would see. This sidebar view that I have turned on can be turned on and off here. Turning it on will allow you to see all of these code comments, though code comments will be in blue, memos yellow. I don't have any memos right now, so we don't have anything to see. So rolling over will highlight the code comment in Max, and then double-clicking will allow me to edit if I like. You can see down here, I've used 5 characters out of 511. So going through that, you can also double-click on any code you would like. You can see here, pulling up the Coded Segments window. Here, you've got a few different bits of data, but most importantly here, the ability to add or edit comments. If you did click on a segment with a comment in it, it would look something a little bit like this. You're able to double-click and edit right here. And then additionally, from the Retrieve Segments window, which will show you codes if you've activated at least one document and one code. Let me activate just all of my other symptom codes. Here, you'll see all of the coded segments you have, and then to the right, you'll see all of your code comments as well. You can toggle this view on and off from this blue speech bubble here. Double-clicking will again allow me to edit. Minimize that. And then pulling up the segment matrix and sorting by my document group is going to show me all of the coded segments. And then here, right below, you'll see the code comment as well. And then finally, rolling over the tooltip, one that you can see the most easily, especially within the document browser, can see your code comment here, and also some metadata about who modified it, who created it, when, and the time. So moving on, we also use the code matrix browser, which is found in the Visual Tools tab, to visualize frequencies of codes assigned to each document through either nodes or numbers. Within the industry, it's useful to view by individual documents, to view either a portion or the entire sample, or viewing by document sets or document groups, analysis like saturation or subgroup analysis. Accessing the code matrix browser through MAXQDA is going to be found in the Visual Tools tab. Clicking on that will pull up this box right here. I have the option to have my columns display either individual documents or document groups, since I do include one group within my document system. I don't have any document sets, nor do I have focus group speakers, so those are not available to me right now. Whenever you do have a document or code activated, these only for activated documents and only for activated codes will both be automatically toggled on. I'll leave that on as well. So hitting OK, this is what I will get. The first time, once you make kind of settings edits, so kind of saying whether you want it displayed as a heat map value or a circle, it will remember it for the next time you open the code matrix browser. So going through some of the settings that I have turned on, I have the displaying codes as the code system hierarchy. So turning that off, it would look like this. It's helpful for, especially when viewing a larger amount of codes within the hierarchy, that you can collapse and easily maneuver within this window. I also like to keep the title as well to short enough that I can see what document it is, but not too long that I don't see a lot of documents within the window. So you have a few different options of how to display these kind of values or nodes. Can do it as either a square node, a circle, just a value, or a value with the heat map. I really like the value with a heat map. The different colors for the different frequencies is very helpful, especially if you're looking through a set of codes that can only be used once per concept per document. Additionally, I like to have the summation turned on. This will sum them across for the codes and then for each document as well. It'll also appear when you export it. You're able to export this as either an Excel document, an HTML, or as a PNG and a few other image files. You're able to copy it as an image to copy it in a clipboard, or you can send it to your questions, themes, and theory worksheet located within MAXQDA. Another helpful feature is that double-clicking on your node, or in this case, heat map value, will directly pull up that coded segment that you have coded with in the Retrieve Segments window. What you can see right here is going to be the coded segment. Here, you can also view the code comment as well. Directly clicking on that coding stripe will take you directly to that code within MAXQDA and very helpfully highlight it for you. Clicking on another different code, for example, this one is triggers, will then pull up the different sets of codes, and I can go to those easily as well. This is very helpful if you want to see the quotes behind the numbers and kind of what you have and what you're working with. Located at the very left of this is going to be an option to automatically open the segment matrix. This will show you all of the quotes for all of the documents and the codes you have. I don't have a lot here because there's not a lot of coded segments, but this is very helpful if you're looking at either a portion or your entire sample, a large portion of your code book. Helpfully displayed to the right of each code will be a number of how many coded segments in parentheses. And you can additionally turn on those code comments as well to view the code comments you have helpfully left. If you have the display codes within the hierarchy turned on, you can also collapse those codes within the hierarchy to view all of the codes that are going to occur as subcodes under the parent. So for example, here, I'm looking at all of these codes underneath of other symptom, all 6, and then I can see the different subcodes right here. So first mention, frequency, severity. You also have as well positional data, so what document it is, and then what position or what line number it occurs on as well. And then this can also be exported as a Word document or an Excel, I believe as an HTML as well. And if you ever get stuck or have questions, this blue help eye that is going to be located to the right of both the segment matrix and the code matrix browser will take you directly to that sheet or that tab, within the MAXQDA 2024's online manual. Helpful if you need to know functions or also identifying different icons. Okay. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kayla.
Thank you. So in the life science industry, it's common to have multiple coders working together on a same project. When there are multiple coders involved, it is essential that they reach coder agreement. Coder agreement ensures that the coding and data interpretation are consistent. To measure the level of agreement between the coders on a project, we use double coding. Double coding refers to the process where all the coders assigned to the project independently code the same transcript. Once that transcript is coded by all the coders, an additional experienced qualitative researcher reviews the coding and provides feedback. Their feedback will highlight any discrepancies or differences in the coding or interpretation. The coders will then come together to align on their understanding and resolve these inconsistencies. This process will continue throughout the coding of the project for 20% of the transcripts about. Coder agreement is important because there are multiple approaches for coding, especially when interpreting complex health-related human experiences. Different coders might interpret the same piece of data in slightly different ways, which can affect the reliability of the analysis. By having multiple coders follow a structured process like double coding, we create a balance between the objectivity and interpretation in our analysis. Ultimately, this process protects data integrity and ensures that coding is systematic. Establishing clear guidelines and having a collaborative review process allows for high quality and accurate analysis. And then moving on to the next slide. To assess the coder agreement, we frequently have to merge project files. Within the industry, we face a unique obstacle by working with PII, or personal identifiable information. Working with sensitive patient data requires strict adherence to confidentiality and ethical guidelines. Therefore, we are unable to use the Team Cloud functionality of MAXQDA, as it does not yet adhere to HIPAA requirements and regulations. Because we are unable to use that feature, we had to determine a workaround for this, since we do collaborate on our coding. The merge project function allows us to divide the coding of transcripts to several team members at once. To do this, we assign the transcripts between the coders on a project and merge files regularly throughout the process. Often on our projects, we will use the document groups with the coders' names to ensure a clear division of the work. We also foster clear lines of communication within the coding team to avoid any repeated efforts, since we are working without the cloud. This also will impact our QC process, as coders will have to split the work via documents rather than the code themselves. So if the coders were to QC different codes for the same transcripts, it could cause some issues with the merge, and we would have to repeat one of the efforts done. While we are merging on projects, one of the features that we find helpful is the project from activated documents feature. This allows us to create smaller project files with a limited group of documents, since some of our projects can be well over 100 transcripts. So using this feature really helps us just merge the bundles with whatever latest transcripts have been coded. And I believe that's everything. So I know we're ending early, but thank you for attending our session. And if you would like, we could go back to any particular slides and we can give a little more time to transition to the Q&A session. And we welcome any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful walkthrough of your process, and I also really appreciate that you also showed us how that looks in MAXQDA. We already have one question in the Q&A section, and I would encourage all of our attendees to also let us know what they would like to know more about. And the question is about how you develop your code system. And they would like to know more about your process of how you developed it and if you use the same code system across different projects.
Yeah, I can speak to that one. So, yes, we do have some similarities and some differences across projects when we are setting up our code system. Typically, within a certain type of project, for instance, if it is cognitive debriefing interviews, we are going to have a pretty similar type of code system across these types of interviews. Of course, there's some give and take, and there's some preference differences, and we do work through those, but overall, we can see some similarities throughout our code system. It is more systematized than not.
Expanding off of...
Sorry.
You can go ahead, Alex.
I would also say within concept elicitation code books, we do like to keep at least some of the language and terminology we'll use for subcodes fairly similar across projects, just if so coders that can kind of transition from one project to another coding aren't having to learn a completely new set of subcodes with completely different meanings. We'll also utilize code memos, which we don't have any here, but we utilize code memos as well to write a short definition of either what the concept means or the subcode means and what it is to code with it.
Mm-hmm. And we'll also see some variability across projects depending on the specific indication or maybe the population of the study. But our code books are in relation to a discussion guide. So we'll have the specific interview type done and we'll base our code book based on the guide and add in new codes as they emerge.
Thank you. I think related to that, there is another question about your codes, and they are saying the codes are really nice and concise, but not very thematic. Do you eventually develop cross-cutting themes also? What does that process looks like?
Yes, usually we do develop cross-cutting themes as we see them emerge. Alex, Kayla, would you like to speak to this also?
I can, excuse me, I can a little bit. I would say closer to either sometimes within kind of the coding plan, we'll build in either kind of a pause halfway through to kind of QC and review the data that we have already. And at this point, we'll start to make these kind of connections cross concept or at the end of the project as well, when we're doing the final QC for the data and kind of preparing it for analysis. I would say usually it's going to be more when we're analyzing the data as a whole and may not come up as much during kind of day-to-day coding.
Another way that we could look at the relationships, if it's established in the beginning of the study, the focus or the interest in certain code relationships, we would build those specific relationships underneath the symptom. So for example, if they wanted to look at how cough is influencing fatigue, we could build those codes there. Another way to analyze the relationship between codes that we'll use is in the visual tools, the code relations browser, where you can look at those intersections. And that's helpful for when maybe in the end they were like, oh, we're actually interested in this relationship. And this would be a nice way to assess that.
So very quickly, this will just be a view of all of the different intersections we have for all of the codes in that example document. So quite a few portions of kind of intersection here just because there is so much overlap. And it will be fairly, and then the icons up here will be fairly similar to that of the code matrix browser as well.
Thank you. We have another question that is asking how many coders work on one project at a time?
It depends on a few different aspects, the type of project, the indication, as well as the complexity of what a project is looking for, a project team is looking for. So it can vary from one person up to, I've seen 4 different coders at one time.
And then you are using the team cloud functionality. You are using the teamwork functionalities to merge that together, right?
Yes, we're merging the projects rather than using the cloud.
And I would also say the number of coders can also vary based on the timeline. So if we have quite of a shorter timeline and tighter, we might pull in maybe one more coder than we might if it was a longer timeline as well.
And how do you identify codes that are added by each coder in their separate MAXQDA files with their assigned transcripts?
I can start this one. I lost the question.
I think it's the how do you identify codes, right?
That are newly
That are
added. Yeah.
Mhm.
So while we're coding, our coders will have weekly alignment meetings to discuss if there are any new codes that should be added or something that they're seeing in their coding that a different transcript may not have seen. We also have an Excel tracker to log when maybe a new code should be developed or if there's questions. And that also helps us keep track and collaborate in coding without that cloud feature. I also like to, if my coders are adding in new codes, have them change the color so that way we know this is something that is emerging or is new in our code book.
I have also, with other coders, had, besides having them kind of added in a different color, also have them add in a little code memo as well with their initials and kind of what they've added in. I'll generally try to have my instruct my coders not to change too much of the actual kind of structure of the code system. So for example, renaming symptoms to or impacts to different names or renaming codes themselves, as that can cause an issue with merging, but adding subcodes in won't be a problem. They'll just merge in normally. So try to have them either leave like a comment or comment in the Excel or a memo as well as the colored coding.
Thank you. The next question goes, what is a typical sample size you are working with?
That can vary greatly. It can be, I've had a project as ranging from 10 transcripts all the way to 90, sometimes more. Alex, Kayla, have you seen similar numbers?
Yes, I think I've had a project as small as I think 11 participants and as big as I think, 60. I think the larger projects may have a different combination of either treatment type or disease stage, disease type, or maybe split between patients and caregivers, and that will be included within the numbers. But I would say traditionally, if it's one population for one specific kind of disease, I want to say around maybe 20 to 25 maybe 30, but I would say we can see a range from very small to very large up to like 90, 100.
Mhm.
I agree. I do think if it is a typical project or having that around 20 to 30 transcripts is more common. But if the study's going on for a longer time, then that's where we'll see those higher number of transcripts. Or also we'll get some cross data or cross country analysis, and those projects also I feel like have more transcripts.
Thank you. The next question is about training, and they are asking, do you train your coders before you do the double coding exercise?
Absolutely. So before we start on the double coding, one of the experienced qualitative leads or coding leads on the project will hop on a call with all the coders and walk through reading out loud, line by line, the transcript. And that's where a lot of the work is done, asking questions and reaching that foundational coder agreement. And I would say it takes a lot of time because there are a lot of questions usually. But that is one of our key first steps that we do to help train our coders for that specific project.
And depending on their familiarity with the MAXQDA software as well, if they're brand new to coding in kind of MAXQDA, I'll kind of take more time even then and kind of walk through, useful features for coding and kind of to help you out while you're coding during that call as well. So they learn a little bit of coding, but also the program as well.
So the next question is probably connected to that, and they are asking, how do you do your quality check?
So I can start with that. So we use quite a few things to do the quality check. So I would say for at the end of a project to ensure that all of the data is accurate and aligns with the coded segments, what we'll do first is utilize the code matrix browser and the different heat map values there to see if there are any codes that have been used incorrectly. So maybe, for example, severity. Typically, those only be used once per concept per document. So as a first eyeball going through this and saying, like, okay, here's 2 for disturbance rating. I need to go in and check that and remove one of them. After that, we'll go through with the segment viewer, and either the segment viewer or the retrieve segments window. It just kind of varies by preference, honestly, and kind of read through the segments and make sure that they make sense, that they align with the code they're actually coded with. At this time, you can also leave kind of comments as well of kind of developing kind of more broad kind of themes and kind of finding those out through just kind of reviewing the data. So we'll first use the code matrix browser for codes that need to only be used once per document per concept, and then utilizing the segment matrix or the retrieve segment window as well. I kind of like that to just read through in this way, reading through the comments, reading through the coded segments, ensuring they've been used accurately. And then also usually we'll have some kind of report outline or table shells that we need. So reviewing those shells that we have and ensuring that we have the data to populate those and that we're cleaning it in a way that will easily allow us to have a table. So if, for example, we needed to quantify treatment expectations going into a clinical trial, ensuring that those are not just all 15 segments aren't in one code, but they have accurate subcodes that are created, so it's easier to generate a table from the code matrix browser, for example. And then I don't know, Ali K, you want to add in kind of typical process, but I would say we kind of do that and more, honestly.
There's ways to spot check it throughout, and one of those that I use is the frequency counts in the code system again with that gear. Yes, that's one way that you can spot check as well to see if all concepts have been accounted for in some way, or whether there was something coded as it was experienced and it was not experienced at the same time. So that's one way to see it and visualize it in spot checks.
I also find that having those weekly alignment meetings where people raise questions also helps QC, because maybe that's where we'll realize two coders are understanding the same code in a different way or interpreting the data in a specific way. And so that also helps make sure everything is coded accurately.
One last tool that I like to use at times is also the summary grid. Under the analysis, you can use the summary grid, which can also be useful for spot checking.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The next question is about, I will bundle the next two. They are asking you if you had the chance to try AI assist for the coding process and if you have any experience with it.
Unfortunately, we do not have that experience or that capability at this time, since we are life science industry and we are using level 3 data, and we need to keep it secure to align with the HIPAA.
The next question is about if you have used MAXQDA for longitudinal analysis, multiple interviews with the same patient across time.
I have. I believe, Alex, you have as well. Kayla,
Yes.
have you too? Okay, so all three of us. Or
Mine's more in a clinical trial sense, maybe not a longitudinal.
Mhm.
Can you tell us how you used it?
Kayla, would you like to speak to your clinical trial experience?
Well, I believe the question is more in reference to longitudinal studies.
Mhm.
But I can start.
Okay.
It depends on how many documents we'll have in each time point, but if it's all in one bundle, I would have documents groups to say which time point, or even adding a document variable to have this is time point 1, time point 2, time point 3, and then using the visual tools and pulling the counts based on those variables to show the comparison of the time point experience.
Yeah. You can also utilize document groups to keep the participants, interview 1, interview 2, interview 3 together in the same kind of group. I think we've used, I would say, document groups to keep the interviews together, and also document variables as well to include anything like if they were on the placebo or the study treatment, or interview 1, interview 2 as well, and then exporting tables based upon that.
And finally, I have seen different points in time that use completely different code books, so code systems that we do create 2 different MAXQDA files for.
Thank you. And how have you used MAXQDA for subgroup analysis?
Yeah, so there are a few different ways. So firstly, we can create document sets for something like saturation by waves, or even subgroup analysis by country. And you can, through the code matrix browser, select your columns to document sets to have it aggregate all of your codes based on those sets. So, wave 1 through wave 5, or, for example, like US, UK, Germany for different interview groups. You can also utilize, through the variables in the document variables, create a new variable for virtually anything. I think we've used it in one project for, treatment type levels, if they're poorly controlled or not. And then you can populate it via the data editor for document variables to include anything anything and everything. You can also very helpfully import and export this through Excel. So if you have a lot of document variables, can pre-fill in Excel and import it into Max. And then through the cross tab, you are able to view any new variables you create will be in blue. You can pull those over, and then through here, you have these options of different values. So if we had more kind of different variable values, you'd have more values. But here for like document name, we have the presentation or document, and then it will provide you a frequency table based on your variable values. And then additionally, you can also look at the coded segments through the segment matrix based on your variable values as well. And both can be exported into Excel or Word.
Would you like to add, or should we move on? For the sake of time, maybe we could move on to the last two questions. So one question is about how do you merge files? Do you have a cleaning step? And if you are keeping, deleting, or merging codes. And another question is about how do you efficiently export code frequencies for tables in your reports?
Okay, so speaking to merging files and the cleaning step, yes, we do like to approach the files before merging and making sure that they are as clean as they can be, and then merging, and then following up with another cleaning step. This can include keeping, deleting, or merging codes. It can look like restructuring the codebook in a few ways. That's a very high level response. We also have a document that we keep for our coding records that will outline these different steps, what is needed and what changes are made. I think we can move on to the last one for time. How do you efficiently export code frequencies for tables in your reports?
So for that, I would say typically, unless I've used document variables, I will most likely go to the code matrix browser first. I find it's easier to kind of explain to coders, especially first-time users or coders, how to use this. And it's pretty easy to set up the table you like, especially if you have already the codes you would like activated, ready to go. So clicking on the code matrix browser and kind of once I have the table view I know that I need, what I'll do is ensure that everything is how I would like it to export. So if, for example, I had these two sets of subcodes collapsed, they would export like that. If I wanted them open, I would have to leave them open. So what I'll do from here is export this as an Excel table. It will come out, it will require some formatting and kind of cleaning up. I think mostly what we do is more for, I would say, easier reading. I'll remove some of the parent code stems because each code out of this will come out with the full parent code. So example, fatigue. Fatigue's first mention would come out as symptoms, fatigue first mention. So just kind of condensing that a little bit to make it a little bit smaller of an Excel table. Those tables won't directly go into any kind of report for dissemination, but what they will do is they'll form the basis for the tables that we will make. Typically, we can make tables in Excel that are going to be more ready for the report, just formatting wise, colors and all of that. And then those can be placed into the report. I've seen some people that are Excel whizzes basically set up formulas that have linked to the max file that we have, or the max output that we have in the Excel to basically generate the table. They can do, I've seen people make the table in there with those formulas and then copy and paste that into a Word document or PowerPoint if needed.